to have Nayaswami Shivani with us, and as she takes a short pause from her overall theme of self-healing and kind of expands into a larger theme of which healing is a subset perhaps of discipleship, and for us to explore ever more deeply the different layers, or in this particular case, the different dimensions of discipleship. Let us, as we always do, begin with a prayer. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, Friend, beloved God, Great Masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashay, Swami Shri Yukteswar, Beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda, Saints of all religions, humbly we bow at your feet. Beloved Masters, help us open ourselves to ever deeper attunement, to ever perfecting our discipleship. May our consciousness every day merge into yours until we feel no separation, no distance, no difference between you and us. One united ray of eternity. And perfect joy. We are your disciples. Guide us always. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's chant together this beautiful song, How Shall I Love Thee? And there's a hint that it talks about all the dimensions of discipleship any of us are going to need. How shall I love thee? How shall I seek thee? How shall I serve thee? How shall I worship thee? So let's sing together. Love, serve, seek, and worship. Okay, love, serve, seek, and worship.
How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a forest, burn to the root my desire.
Serve.
How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a forest, burn to the root my desire. How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a forest, burn to the root my desire.
Worship.
How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires.
Love.
How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desires.
Serve.
How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire.
Seek.
How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire.
Worship.
How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe?
How shall
Let's close our eyes just for a few moments, uplift our gaze, sit upright, and feel the energy you have awakened from this chant being redirected now into the spine through your heart, guided up to the spiritual eye. And feel all that love, all that joy being fed through your nerves and being offered up to God and Guru.
You can... Oh, another one of those. You can keep your eyes closed or open them as we begin our satsang for the evening. I'd like to tell you a little story about this song, because it was a song that Swami Kriyananda wrote when he was in Assisi many, many, many years ago. And Ananda in Europe started its existence in Italy. And we were in the northern part of Italy. And then we moved down to Assisi. And just as we moved, Swami Kriyananda came and spent a couple months with us, and he had a house near the center where we were living at the time, which is not where we're living now. But in any case, when he was with us at that time, it was 1986, it was at the time that he developed the Discipleship initiation. He developed the Festival of Light, and I think that you're familiar, many of you are familiar with, yes, with the Festival of Light. And he wrote songs for the Festival of Light, and then he wrote some chants in Italian. Okay. Chants that you sing all the time in English, we sing in Italian, and also in English, and oftentimes in other languages. Well, one of the songs he wrote, and I'm not sure that it was precisely then in 1986, but it could have been, was this song. And this song was originally written in Italian. And what we sing in English is a translation by Swami of the song he originally wrote in Italian. And I'd just like to tell you one line which is very slightly different in the Italian, but is complemented by the same line in English. In the second part of this song, the words are, come un fuoco arde nel bosco, brucerò l'ego in te. And it translates as a fire burns a forest, so will we burn our ego in you. So the ego is mentioned. Mm-hmm. And we often sing this chant before purification ceremony because it mentions, the power and the heat that we need to generate in order to brucer, in order to burn our ego. Now, the English version says what? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the roots my desires. Anyway, I thought you might be a little interested to know that some of the chants that we sing were originally written in Italian. When one time when Swami was giving a class, it was I'm pretty sure it was somewhere in Italy, but I can't be sure because I was blessed to attend so many of his classes. But I remember he was talking about the guru and the disciple relationship, and it was to a general public. And when Swami opened it up for questions, which he sometimes but not always did, a young man got up and with a slightly arrogant tone in his voice, he said, but I don't need an ego. I don't need an ego. I don't need a guru, do I? Okay. And so I was curious, now how was Swami going to answer this question? This is where it came from. And Swami said to him, oh no, you don't need a guru. But when you want to find God, if you ever do, you will need a guru then. Now, normally when we talk about this advice from Swami, and I think this is quoted often in Ananda centers around the world, we focus on the second part, which is when we want to find God, we will need that guide. But this evening, I'd like to say something about the first part, which is, oh no, you don't need a guru. You know, it takes who knows how many incarnations of evolution until we come to the point where we want to know God. You remember that story? I think it's in the Path, where one of the disciples is discouraged. You know, this happens to all of us. And Master's there, and he says, oh, Master, you know, I don't have good karma. You know, I don't think I will ever find God. And that's when Master answered him, remember this, you have very, very, very good karma to even want to know God. So think of all of the incarnation. They're behind us now. All of the incarnations when we didn't want to know God. And does that mean that during those times we were not growing? We were not evolving? Of course we were. And evolution is a very slow process. You know, I often think of how many billion years it took for the fish in the ocean to even want to walk on land, to even think that there was something beyond the ocean, you know, and who knows, the first one who kind of, you know, stuck his nose out of the water and saw that there was something beyond that. But even then, it took so many billions of years to change, the fins into legs and so forth. Evolution is a slow process. But on the other hand, evolution is the greatest power in the universe, because it is the power of creation that carries God's will, that every one of his creatures evolves to the point where we become the perfect image of God, where we are expressions, where we are living Satchitananda, where we can say from our own experience, Aham Brahman Asmi, I am that infinite consciousness. Well, what about all of the time before then? How do we grow? And this is the long period of time in which the ego is our friend. Because in the beginning of the evolutionary process, and Master talks about the individual creation being endowed with a soul. It starts, Master says, back to when we are minerals, which brings up all kinds of questions which I'm not even going to mention because I'm not capable of answering them. But, the ruby, the diamond, the magnesium, the iron, it all in some way, in some way certainly has consciousness, is endowed with consciousness, but not awareness. There's a difference. Consciousness pervades. There is nothing, not even the rocks and the pebbles and the dust. There is nothing that is not endowed with consciousness, but it is awareness that grows and expands. So in those early stages of evolution, the soul, which we have been and which we still are, that soul was identified with a collective. There was not an individual awareness. For example, does a single ant or a single bee or a single bird identify itself as an individual? It does not. It's part of a collective. And it's a fascinating collective. The places, the hills where ants live, the hives where bees live, and we've all seen a stormo of birds, a flock. We've all seen a flock of birds and how they just move in complete harmony. How do they do that? Because each one of them is part of a collective. But as the soul, not as the soul, as we evolve, we need to develop an individual identity. This is extremely important because as an individual, we need to gain independence from the collective, from the society, from even our own nuclear family, at a certain point, even our spiritual family. Okay. Independence is a very important aspect of spiritual development. And so, as the ego evolves, it is not right to say that the soul evolves. There's no soul evolution. The soul is ever perfect. It's ever pure. But who is it that evolves? What is it that evolves? It is the twin brother or sister of the soul. And we know, as Master teaches us, that the soul is individualized spirit. Think about that. In this very short definition, the soul is individualized spirit. And this is what we need to grow and claim, is our individuality. Master says that each soul is unique. By the way, I'm thinking back to one of my early gurus. You know of him, Hanel Cassidy. He was very careful with words. And right now, having had the opportunity to write books, I very much appreciate his prudence with words. And he would not, I don't know the word now in English, he couldn't stand when somebody would qualify the word unique. Somebody would say, oh, it's very unique. And he would say, it can't be very unique, it's unique. It's one of a kind. It can't be nearly unique. It can't be extremely unique. Okay. There are certain words that are superlative, and unique is one of them. And what it means when Master says that each one of us is unique means there's never been anybody like you. Your ego probably has always known that, hasn't it? Okay. There never will be anyone like you, but the whole process of evolution is to discover and claim our uniqueness. Okay. Because each one of us comes to sing a song that has never been sung. One of Master's poems, an early poem of his that's in his book Songs of the Soul. I don't know if you know that book of poetry. The poems there are different than the ones in Whispers from Eternity. And one of those poems is called The Noble New. I just love that poem. And the first line of it is, sing songs that none have sung. You know, that's what we're here to do. Because our soul has a unique contribution to the symphony of life. You know? And life is not going to be complete on this planet this planet can never go into the night of Brahma and, be complete until each one of us, until every creature has discovered and sung his unique song. So the soul, which is unique, when it's manifest into this world of duality, comes with a twin. And we know who that is. The twin is the ego. And the ego, as Master teaches us, is the soul which identifies with the physical body and the physical world and the physical reality, with our emotions, with our thoughts, with what we do, with our professions, and so forth. It's about identification. With what do we identify? And so the ego evolves in its self-identity. In this first stage of evolution, it identifies the Shudra with the physical body and the desires and the needs of the physical body. And then, with evolution, the ego identifies as the Vaishya with what it does, with its talents, with what it's capable of doing, with its creativity, and willpower is born. Okay? And it's every stage of evolution is important, it's critical to our arriving at the point where it's the ego that knows that it wants God. Because the soul always knows. The soul is born knowing that it wants God. But it's the twin that needs to catch up. So, the Vaishya develops these, its capacities and so forth. And what does it identify with? It identifies with its capacities. In the beginning, of evolution, a Vaishya is still going to have a collective consciousness. It's going to work for others, be part of a whatever, be part of some kind of collective. But as the Vaishya mentality grows, it begins to acquire a sense of individuality. Not only can I and should I work for somebody or something else, but I can work for myself. I can be an independent worker. Galena, you've come through this evolution of working for a large society in a dignified and important role, leaving that and becoming self-sufficient. It's a little scary, isn't it? And it takes time and it takes courage, but that's part of the ego's evolution. And so, as Swami says in different ones of his books, the ego for a long time is our friend because it identifies with ever more expansive realities and it uses its willpower in ever more challenging ways. In order for us to be a true disciple, we need to own our self-identity and not feel that we have developed as much as it needs to be developed. We need to claim that identity. It's not the weak-willed who come to discipleship and come on the path of God. Let's take as an example St. James Lin. We know him as Rajarsi Janakananda. You know him, right? Well, Rajarsi Janakananda, as probably all of you, but maybe not all of you, know, was a self-made man. What does that mean? It means that he didn't inherit wealth. He wasn't born into a family that was already wealthy and they gave it to him and he just wasted, as so many people do, or just carried on and made more. No, he didn't have, he even couldn't go on in his education. I think he dropped out of school when he was about 10 years old or so because he had to work to help support his family. But he studied. He was self-taught. He became so many things that was difficult. And when he came to master, he was the president and the chairman of so many societies. He had a lot of wealth. He had wealth in oil. He had great fields of orange trees and lettuce fields. And he was in charge of different societies of insurance. He was fully developed by the time he came to master. And then he could expand beyond his identity, beyond what he could do with his own willpower to ask, what is God's will? So for us, we talk about attunement as being important in discipleship, which of course it is. But I think, and I'm not alone, I think I have good support from our masters, that that until we can be in attunement with our own identity, our own unique song, with the capabilities, with the outer edges of our capacities and our willpower, we're not ready to be attuned to God. Master would say, and he said to Arjuna, the spiritual path is not for the weak. It's for the strong. It's for the courageous. Now, I am not advocating that we egoically, claim our self-identity. Today I was working with the company that's in charge of creating a media presence for me. And she was an Instagram account. And she was saying, well, write your biography. I need to have 5 or 6 words. And I did. And I put very small author at the end. And she said, no, you need to put that at the beginning. That's important. And I said, hey, yeah, but I've passed my whole life not doing that, it's not something I can claim. I'm not the author of these books. Yogananda, he's the author, and whatever. Okay. And so I'm not saying that we, and was I going to say spiritual teacher? Of course, when we're devotees, we're humble because we know that God is the doer. But before we can truly know that God is the doer, we need to do. And we need to do well. And even when we're on the spiritual path, we need not have fear of doing well and of doing things. But things change in the evolutionary progression, especially between, the Vaishya, who is the real ahankara. I'm doing this, this is my business, my employees, my trophies, and so forth. And we move to the Kshatriya, where we use our willpower and we begin to do for the benefit of others. Okay? And we serve the necessities of others. And this is such an important part of our spiritual growth. And this is part of who we are as disciples. But the biggest jump is between the Kshatriya and the Brahmin. Okay? Because the Kshatriya asks, what do others want? What do others need? What can I give? But the Brahmin doesn't. Yeah. For the Brahmin, that part of evolution is all past. And the Brahmin's mantra is, what does God want? There's, I think most of you know about the Italian Christian saint Francis. You know, Ananda in Europe is established in Assisi, and we're there because of the blessings of Master and of his connection with Saint Francis. Master himself visited Assisi in 1936 because of his love for Saint Francis. So when you come on pilgrimage to Assisi, it's a double blessing, because Master walked the same streets that you will walk and visited the same churches that you will visit in Assisi, and St. Francis was there. Well, St. Francis, at the beginning of his life, his self-identity was as a young, wild man and a minstrel. Do you know what a minstrel is? It's a musician. The minstrels would walk through the streets and play their instruments and sing. It was, it was the jolly bunch that would go around and have a good time. He was a good time person. And then he identified himself as a soldier. He wanted to he wanted to go out and fight. And he did. It wasn't a success at all, and he got injured and he got sick and he spent some time in prison. It was when he was in prison that he evolved or remembered his past evolution into wanting something and identifying with something beyond what he had been identified with. And when he was released from prison and was over his serious illness, he began to go to an old church that was far outside, not by our standards far, but it was quite far outside the walls. In those times, the medieval times, the towns had walls to protect them, and forts and so forth. And you'll see that when you come. They're still there. And anyway, he would go to this church, San Damiano, which was just a ruin. And he would go there and pray every day. And there was a cross there. It was actually a very unusual cross, which we'll also see when you come to Assisi. It's not in that church anymore. It's in another one. It's kind of an Eastern type church. So when you do come, get close and look at it very carefully, or look it up on Google and just look at the images that are on it. In any case, so I don't get too far off the track. Yes. So St. Francis would go there every day, and he would pray, and he would say the same prayer over and over and over again. And the stories about him, and when you read them, it seems as though he was there for a couple days and suddenly he had his epiphany. No, he was there day after day, night after night, month after month. This was his prayer. I'll tell it to you in Italian. Signore, cosa vuoi che io faccia? Which is, Lord, what do you want me to do? Okay. Your will, not mine. I have finished living according to my will. That part of life is finished. Now I have only one desire. What do you want me to do? And he had to say that prayer again and again and be so deeply convinced of that he finally heard the voice of God answering him. He didn't quite understand what the answer was. God said to him, Francis, rebuild my church. That was the answer to his prayer. And so Francis looked around, and the church, the little church he was in ruins. And he said, okay, God wants me to build this church. And he set out to do it, and he did do it. But as he grew in understanding, he came to see that God wanted him to rebuild the church of faith, of Christian faith in God. And he was a revolutionary and really did rebuild the Christian church at that time. So as we evolve into that Brahman state, this becomes the hallmark of our discipleship. You know, this mantra, this prayer of St. Francis, Lord, Guru, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do today? What do you want me to say? How do you want me to do it? You know, where should I go? This is the constant prayer of the disciple, and the openness to hear what God wants us to do. You know, God's instrument for us is the Guru. For us, the Guru is omnipresent in the higher worlds, and so is our spiritual guide, Swami Kriyananda. So we have to make great efforts. But those efforts begin always with this question, always with this prayer. Lord, what do you want me to do? And then be open. I'll tell you briefly a story that I often tell. At Ananda Village, for the first 8 years of my time there, I was there for 16 years. The first 8 years, I, of my own volition, worked in the organic gardens. For no apparent reason, I was highly unqualified to do that. But in any case, I did, and I loved it, and I identified with it. And every day was a great joy, you know, to get up and in the sun and go in the garden. And, you know, you talk to the plants, and they don't argue with you. It's just, there's, you know, there's no ego in nature. You know? But anyway, I enjoyed it very much. And during those 8 years, I watched all of my friends be moved from job to job. You know, they'd spend maybe a year or two here, and then Swami would say, oh, wouldn't you like to try that? And then after a year or two, wouldn't you like to try that? So by the time I was 8 years in the garden, most of my friends had had 4 different jobs. And one day the thought came to me, gosh, I wonder if I'm growing. You know, I'm growing plants, but am I growing? You know? So I thought, well, I should ask Swami. You know, maybe he has something that he wants me to do. But my ego didn't like that at all. You know, I said, no, I'm very happy. I really love what I'm doing. I never want to do anything else. But then I thought, gosh, but what, you know, if I'm here and I'm not growing, I'm going to waste this whole incarnation. So I said, okay, I've got to call and make an appointment to see Swami. But, you know, the wisdom of the soul came through and said to me, Shivani, you're not ready to go and see Swami. Because if you go and ask him, you're just not ready for the answer. Okay? So I just meditated. And like in every meditation, I visualized something that he could possibly ask me to do. You know, like, well, why don't you work in the office? No, I want to work outside in the air, in the sun. No. And then, so I'd meditate until I'd get to the point in my if he said that, okay. If he said it, it's, you know, he's an instrument for master. I'm asking God through, okay. And then I'd go to the next step and the next step. So I got to the step with, and what if he says to me, go out to one of the centers, you know, in another state and serve there? No. I can never leave Ananda, absolutely never. You know, this is where I was born spiritually, you know, it's just huge fight. Okay, meditate, meditate, meditate. Okay, if he sends me to a center, I go to a center. Okay. So then I got to the last part of this self, whatever it was called, you know, and I said, and what if Swami says to me, Shivani, you are not suited to live in this community. Get out, walk out the door, don't take anything with you, and don't say anything to anyone. Okay, so that was a tough one. There was a lot of tears. You know, I went through it. I don't know what this was all about. I mean, you know, nobody had ever said this is what you should do, but I did it. And until I got to the point in my meditation where if that's what God wanted me to do, that's what I was going to do, because there was going to be something for me in a different place. Okay, so I could see myself walking, not looking back, not turning into a pillar of salt. You don't know that reference. Anyway, so, and I don't know how long it took me, but it was a long time. And so I was ready. And I called, and Swami said, oh, yes, come down. You know, how can I help you? As he would often say. And I said, well, Swami, you know, I've been in the garden all of these years, and perhaps there's something that you would like me to do that would help me in my spiritual growth. Okay. So there was a brief moment of silence, you know, and my heart was pounding, you know. And then he said, Shivani, you're doing such a good and important job in the garden. I think you should stay there. Story's not finished. So, you know, great, okay. So some time passed, I think it was a few months. And then one day I get a phone call. Shivani, would you like to come for tea? Sure, Swami. Okay, go down to tea, we're having tea. And then Swami says, Shivani, how would you like to become the manager of Ananda Publications? And you know, I think I just went white. I mean, of all the jobs, you know, it probably was the hardest, you know, indoors, all these people printing, you know, but I remembered. I mean, my soul remembered, you know, and so my ego was here on this shoulder, and it was saying, say no, you know, because he asked you, would you, you know, it was a question. And the soul angel was on this shoulder going, say yes. And, you know, all of this happened in about 1 second, but it seemed like a week. And Swami asked the question, and I said, yes, sir. And, you know, then I was like breathless. And he didn't say anything. And then I said, but what should I do? I said, I have no experience. And he said, sell my books. 3 words. Sell my books. And I said, Swami, how? And he said, that's for you to figure out. That's all the advice he ever gave me for that job. Okay? And I must confess that although I was there for 4 years, I did a bad job. You know, I mean, there were 4 excruciating years. The financial state of that business when I entered was not good. It was worse when I left. We published The Path. We published Bard's first book, Sharing Nature, with children. We got rid of our own printing. I mean, a lot of things happened. But I can't say that those were successful years for the business. But they were successful years for my evolution. I mean, I learned so much. You know, I saw a lot of flaws, a lot of cracks in the pod. I behaved badly and learned how to behave well and so forth. Okay. But it's getting to the point, no matter how long it takes, to say, Signore, cosa vuoi che io faccia? You know, Lord, Master, Swami, my super consciousness, what do you want me to do? And then to do it every day, you know, to make it really a way of life. I mean, there's so much I could say about discipleship, and you've heard so much about discipleship. But perhaps just this one thought can open up for all of us new horizons. I really put this into practice in the 2 years that I was writing the books on healing with life force. I mean, every day I would get up and say, Master, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to say? You know, what's next? You know, how, you know, is this right? Is this wrong? You know, just that collaboration, you know. And what does God want us to do? Come closer to Him, you know, to love Him, to seek Him, to worship Him, to serve Him. But He's going to show us how. You know, I think our part as disciples is to keep asking the question. And when we do, God and Guru will show us exactly how to figure it out, how to keep taking our steps on the spiritual path. Then they can guide us. I think one of the most important ceremonies that we have, if not the most important, is the purification ceremony. And in that one phrase, when we come up to the altar and the Guru responds, you know, we say, I seek purification by the grace of God. So that's us asking for God's will and His purification. And what is the answer? The Master says, open your heart to me, and I will enter and take charge of your life. Is everyone ready for a master to take charge of their life? You know, that man who stood up and asked the question, no. And he didn't need it. Okay. But we have come over the stages of evolution, and we're ready now to hear that every single week. The Master says, open your heart to me. Not just open your heart to life, open your heart to nature. Open your heart to me. And I will enter and take charge of your life. This was the dilemma of Arjuna in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And the turning point, when he put down his weapon. Remember that? He's in the chariot. He puts down his weapons. And I think that's symbolic of us putting down our individual will, our ahankara. And he said, I don't know anything, Krishna. Guide me. You are my guru. Tell me what to do. So this is just a little pearl, a little suggestion of how we can continue in a very dynamic way with our evolution in discipleship. Discipleship doesn't happen one day with one ceremony. It happens every day when we say, God and Guru, what do you want me to do, to think, to say, to make? And then whoosh, that power comes in and takes us step by step until we're there. When we realize our true identity, our uniqueness, our oneness in God. We have 5 minutes now, and I'd be very happy if you would like to ask some questions, make some comments, share an experience. You have a guru. So the question is, would I have learned what I needed to learn staying in the garden? No, I do not. Because it was easy. I mean, at that point, I had done what I could do, in the garden. And there were others, and there was the system, and we were all disciples of Hanel. And, there's only so far you can go. And when you reach that, the ego, here on this shoulder is saying, stay comfortable. Okay? And on the other shoulder, it's saying going into the unknown. In the Festival of Light, the little bird, and then what it says to him, and the night says to him, in the I'm hearing it in Italian. I can't even say it in English. In the unknown, the ignoto, there's where our growth is. So no, we have to either challenge ourselves or accept life's challenges and go onward, the noble new. And we need to keep singing new songs that help us to express our uniqueness. I've never lost my love for plants, and now I have, by my house, I have some fabulous flower gardens. When I worked in the gardens, it was all about vegetables. And Hanel, our gardening guru, he also had a passion for flowers, and I never could give a thought to flowers. I said, we have to grow food for this community. It's about food, it's vegetables. What are we going to do with flowers? And now my gardens are all flowers. I understand that. So there it is. For me personally, perhaps someone else in the garden at that time in the same situation could have continued to grow. But I had gone as far as I could. Yes. What can we do when we feel afraid of being moved out of our comfort zone? It's a process. It's a training. I think if we wait for life to present to us a crisis, a challenge, where we're forced out of our comfort zone, it is frightening. But I think what we do is we train, just like we train, for anything. Arjuna and I trained to run marathons, and it would have been frightening if we tried to run a marathon the first time we had the thought, but it took us a long time to build up. So we trained, and we trained day by day, and we had a little system, what's it called, a little routine, that was a professional routine and so forth. So my answer to that question is every day. It's not my answer. This is what Master says. He says, every day do something that you've never done before or take on a challenge. Okay? And so that we just get out of our comfort zone every day. It could be in very little ways. If you're used to doing 48 kriyas, well, one day you do 60. If you're used to driving somewhere, take a bicycle. You see what I mean? It's just the challenging ourselves in small ways every day. Okay? And then we build up. We build up the experience that when we do take on a challenge, and especially when our ego is saying no, no, no. So somebody asks you, would you like to go here to Hyderabad or whatever with us to help us give some programs, and your mind is saying, no, no, I don't have time, I have this, I have that, and then say, okay. So the voluntarily going beyond our comfort zone, a little bit at a time. Okay, so we have one question and then two questions. Please, your name, please? Aparna. That's fine. So let's have. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Master and all great masters say how important it is to keep the company of other devotees. Okay? And he even places it as more important than sadhana. Now, why is that? It's because we learn to a great extent by osmosis. And whatever environment we're in kind of seeps into us, So if we're always in, worldly environments where people are in conflict and, so forth, mundane and whatever, we absorb that. And quite possibly you cannot avoid some of those environments. But you can willfully, voluntarily choose also to be in this kind of environment. And the more that you are, the better it is. And then things happen, because there's a magnetism in a spiritual environment. It's just like meditating in a group. We meditate by ourselves, and there are very good things that can happen. We meditate in a group, there are very good things that can happen. We're both carried along and also contributing to the magnetism. So I would say what Master has said to us, be with as much as possible other spiritual people. And we have such a blessing these days that we can do so online. During the COVID years, we in Europe, everywhere at Ananda, we began to give Kriya initiation online. And that was, there was a lot of questions about that. How can that work? And what we discovered by people who received Kriya online and by giving Kriya online, it was just as powerful. Those people got the vibrations, even though, we were a big group together and it was online, but, even the transmission of the blessing, it got there. The first Kriya online that we did, I was involved in, and it was the most powerful Kriya that I had ever been involved in. It was just surprising. So there's many ways, to be with. And my heavens, on YouTube, all of those talks of Swami Kriyananda. We have the audios of Yogananda, and our phones are big enough now to carry them all. So, if you're in a rickshaw or whatever it is, don't waste time. Have satsang. Just put in the earphones and listen to something. At home, I have Swami chanting Om all the time in my house. Okay, so again, that's satsang. So that would be a very good thing to do, not just for young disciples, but for all of us. Yeah. Okay, Aparna. And Vandana? Okay, so the question is the Living Discipleship course in Italy. It's a program that has a 1-month intensive and then includes a 1-year period of orientation. In the 1 month, the purpose of the Living Discipleship program is in an Ananda community, become oriented both to the teachings and to the magnetism of living in spiritual community, because it's very much different than living a normal life and just visiting a spiritual place. So the 1 month intensive is where the people participating actually live in the same house together. And they meditate together and study the teachings together, and they do service together. They have a day of seclusion and so forth. So, and there are, of course, the more senior Ananda acharyas who are with them for that month. And then for the other 11 months, they continue to have satsangs, I think 2 or 3 times a week in the evening. and they have some, program that carries through, and they do seva, they do service in the community and in different areas of the community. And in that 1 year period, the individual comes to know by his own experience if that is their particular community, or perhaps another one, or perhaps to, just return to their life with greater awareness and understanding and so forth, and to continue their spiritual path in another context. But it is specifically for people who are interested in living within the context of an Ananda spiritual community. Okay, thank you, all of you. I don't want to keep you. And it's always a pleasure being here with you. And I'm going to see you again. When is that? That's on Sunday. And we're going to talk about challenges, We're going to talk about the relationship challenges. And I'm going to be talking about all kinds of relationships. This is not just couple relationships, but it's relationships with your family, your parents, your children, your colleagues, your spiritual friends, your clients, and so forth. So I hope you're able to come, either here in presence or online. And Sergio, I'm sure there's something you would like to say as well to conclude.
I'd like to say thank you very much, Shivani, for that beautiful talk. I wasn't expecting that direction, and it was wonderful.
Yeah, I knew the direction, but not the capacity.
Okay. Well, we do have our workshop on Sunday that all of you know. Some of you are going to be receiving your higher Kriya on Saturday. And so those of you who are, you know who you are. And so just make sure that you are well prepared for that in the way that we have already shared with all of you. We are going to be going to Worli tomorrow, the three of us. And so we will only see all of you here at the community.